Now we're going to learn how to graph equations that don't fit into a small window, and we're going to learn about what Xscl and Yscale actually do. Now we're going to graph the equation y equals 50x plus 100. Now we want to graph that for x between -5 and 5. But look at our y values. Y values go from -350 to 150. Those are large values, and they won't fit on a graph if we just mark them up by 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. So instead, when we build our graph, what we want to do is we want to show a region that goes with x going from -5 to 5, and with y going from negative, let's say 500. Really, we only see 350. But we'll go from -500 up to 300, which is a little more than this. So when we set our calculator up, we will set x min to be -5, x max to be 5. Y min is going to be lower than -350. We're going to set it to -500. And y max, we're going to set it a little bigger than 150. We're going to set it to 300. Now, we also don't want to have these little tick marks up and down the y-axis going 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You won't be able to see them and they won't fit. So that's where Xscale and Yscale come in. On this graph, the marks on the x-axis are all worth 1. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. But the marks on the y-axis are each worth 100. 100, 200, 300. So we'll use Xscale of 1 and a Yscale of 100. Now we'll make the graph on the calculator and see what it looks like. Now, I've already entered the equation into our y equals, so that's 50x minus 100. But now let us set up the window. So we decided that we want the window on the x-axis to go from -5 to 5. So set that up to -5 to 5. And the x-scale is going to be 1. On the y-axis, we're going to go from a minimum of -500, so that's -500, to a max of 300. But we want the x-scale to be 100 because we want a tick mark every 100. And we'll leave the x-res alone, just whatever it is, you can leave it to that. And now let's look at our graph. Along the x-axis, you'll know that this goes from -5, -4, 3, 2, 1, 0. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And along the y-axis, this goes from -500, 400, 300, 200, 100, 0, 100, 200, 300. So you can see the entire graph on the calculator. Now, just so you know why we do this, let's take a look at what would happen if we just used a regular window that goes, let's say, from -10 to 10, -10 to 10. What would that look like? We can do that quickly by pressing Zoom and then Z standard number 6. That'll reset our graph, and you notice you see this line coming in here. Well, you know that that's not the whole graph, and it looks like that because the y values are way too high to fit on the screen. So that's why we needed to set our window the way we did. And now I'm just going to go back and we're going to set the x min and y min back to what we had it before, -500 and 300. And we'll see that the graph returns to what we saw before. You notice that this y-axis is thick. Well, that happened because we did not reset the y-scale. So let's go in and do that. We'll go down and set the y-scale, and we had it set to 100. Enter. And now let's look at the graph. And there we go. Now, maybe having tick marks every 100 is not quite what we want. Maybe we want to see them every 50. So let's see what happens if we look at tick marks every 50. We'll go down to y-scale. We'll make the y-scale 50. look at the graph, and now we'll see that there are more tick marks, and we know that each of these is worth 50. So this concludes our discussion of the window and Xscl and Yscale. And now here's a quick summary of the full graphing process, including the scale. So you enter your equation, y equals, and type the equation. Then you set up your window, xmin and xmax, and the xscale to indicate the distance between the tick marks on the x-axis, and then ymin and ymax, and the y-scale, which is the distance between the tick marks on the y-axis, and then press graph to see your graph.